Hey, Julie, appreciate you joining. As a way of getting started, tell us a little bit more about your journey and a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. My journey has been much like a lot of other people's journeys, which is more of a jungle gym than a ladder. It's been sometimes two steps forward and 10 steps back, but nonetheless, when I reflect back on kind of my journey, all roads have led to where I sit today. So that's been really cool. I started in sales straight out of college, selling telephone landlines of all things. And
Okay.
yeah, not glamorous in the slightest, the least sexy product, particularly because it was during a time when mobile devices were becoming a lot more popular. So if you want to talk about an uphill battle, try selling a telephone landline into a business where they're moving to mobile devices. But I do credit a lot of kind of my thick skin to that role in particular. I was young, so straight out of college, really didn't know up from down. Thought I was going to go into this like very credible corporate career. I had done an internship, multiple internships with Allstate Insurance, which was headquartered in the Chicago suburbs where I grew up, and had a career opportunity to go to Ireland with them. And I am stubborn. So much to my parents' chagrin, decided, nah, I'm not going to do that. I am instead going to pack up my Volkswagen Jetta to the brim and drive to Seattle, Washington, where I know not a single soul, and go sell telephone landlines because that is a completely logical thing to do. And so that's what I did. And I did that for actually a couple years. And then obviously quickly realized this was not a long term career path for me. So I then sort of transitioned into where I got my education, which was more around communication and marketing. And I worked for a small private marketing firm based out of Seattle who had clientele like Microsoft and T-Mobile. And so I did find that work a lot more rewarding. That's not to say that the telephone line gig wasn't rewarding. It was rewarding in a different way. It was incredibly challenging. And I heard no over and over and over again, which is just part of being in sales. You will hear no far more than you hear yes. And so, anyway, I went into marketing. That also was a really great experience for me because it rounded out what is sort of like the full life cycle of a sales opportunity. Because obviously, marketing and sales are so intertwined and both are necessary to move the needle. And so, it was really good for me to kind of see the other side of the coin. So I did that for a number of years, and again worked with really big clientele, which was also great because it was high stress, high pressure, quick deliverables, fast and large statement of works, but great for someone who was kind of like young in their career and green and honing skill sets and understanding how to craft emails and stuff like that. So that was great. And then I finally made a transition to healthcare, which is obviously where I've spent the bulk of my career the last almost 2 decades to date myself. Wow, that's a tough pill to swallow. But I worked for a company called AmerisourceBergen. They're a large wholesale pharmaceutical company, massive actually. They're a Fortune 50. They probably are Fortune 25 by now. So huge company that no one's ever really heard of. And I also, so that's when I kind of made my foray into healthcare and also into large capital sales. I was selling large capital into the inpatient hospital pharmacy environment. So that was my first capital sales experience. And that's really when I fell in love with capital sales. So I did that for a number of years, kind of moved all over the country for that company, picking up various territories, and then ultimately transitioned to Stryker, which is where I spent the last 13 years in various roles. Started off as an individual contributor selling communication equipment, which is booms, lights, integration. So did that. So as an individual contributor, then you've moved into a regional manager position, and then ultimately finished my career with Stryker as an area sales director for the Mako orthopedic robotics division. And that's really where I got a lot of access to higher level executives in healthcare and got to better understand the true and real challenges that they face. And that's what led me to startup and founder life, and sort of flipping from med device back over to more of a SaaS model. So the last 2 decades in a nutshell, in less than 60 seconds ish.
Love it. I definitely have some follow-up questions, but real quick, so you transitioned from Striker. Now you're, I believe, co-founder, CEO of Giggly. Tell us a little bit more about what that is, what you guys do, that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so part of that tenure at Mako, which is part of Stryker, like I said, I got to sit with high-level hospital and healthcare executives, whether it be in traditional inpatient or ambulatory surgery centers, wherever it was, kind of in traditional healthcare spectrum, and talk about. Obviously, I was there to talk about their orthopedic service line, but inevitably we would talk about just business. And I have a genuine curiosity for the challenges that different operators face. And so I would always ask sort of broader questions. And almost 9 times out of 10, those conversations would land or lead to some sort of labor discussion. And there were instances where they were unable to purchase our product, which was an orthopedic robot, because they were facing staffing shortages. They had issues staffing the operating room, whether it's anesthesia, radiology, surgical scrubs, whatever it was, they were having issues staffing those cases. And so my wheels just got turning. And when you hear a problem over and over again, at least this is how I'm wired, I just kind of start to daydream about it and try to fix it. Whether or not I ever act on what I think the solution is kind of irrelevant. I do like to think about how I might fix a problem, large or small. And this particular labor problem just kept slapping me across the face. And so I got an opportunity to have dinner with a CNO who I respect incredibly and deeply. And she is a brilliant force in healthcare. And she was approaching their labor issues very uniquely. And that really spurred what is the product that I represent today, which is called Giggly. And so what we're doing is we're focusing solely and singularly on the frontline healthcare employee. So we come into a hospital or an ambulatory surgery center or long-term care facility, skilled nursing, wherever you are in the spectrum of healthcare. And instead of saying our solution to your labor shortage is to bring an outside worker in, we actually are really focused on how we maximize your current employees. So you have to wear the name badge of the facility and be a W-2 employee of the facility in order to use our product. Because I believe that by and large, the solution to the healthcare shortage and the inefficiencies and all of that lies right under everyone's nose, which is how do we take a part-time nurse, for example, and give them visibility to additional shifts and serve it up in a way that they're accustomed to digesting information, which by and large is mobile device applications. And so I think there's latency in the workforce that we can tap into to solve their problem. What that creates is a win-win. The employees feel seen and heard. Perhaps they can make a little extra money in the process. And likewise, the executive isn't worried about exorbitant external labor costs that impact their P&L. And also, there's a lot of inefficiencies and sometimes errors that occur when you bring an unfamiliar worker into your facility. So it does create this beautiful win-win. In short, I'm trying to just restore balance to the healthcare ecosystem through maximizing labor.
Love it. I appreciate you sharing that. And there's no doubt it is by far probably the biggest problem in healthcare, maybe one of the biggest problems in the country, like any industry. But it's really cool that you guys are trying to solve that. Not an easy one to try to solve, but it makes total sense what you're saying. Nothing against nurse staffing and all that type of stuff, but you're going internally, you're building up the culture, you're helping out existing things where you can get momentum faster. So it makes a lot of sense to me, but not necessarily easy to execute. I'm sure there could be some challenges with that. So one thing I wanted to ask you, because you have such a diverse background with big companies and startups, something that I get asked a lot, or people, they find startups very sexy. They're very attractive. It sounds cool. You get equity. There's all this upside, but selling at a startup is way different than selling at a bigger company. for
Yeah.
example. What have you seen there? Have you seen differences, or was it a pretty seamless transition?
Yeah, I wish that I have three incredible area sales managers in the field that are selling on behalf of Giggly. And obviously, I do a ton of selling because I love it. I'll never get away from being in front of customers. It's truly where my passion lies. But I wish they were on to talk through some of this because they also
Mhm.
all have big corporate backing and branding experience, and then now are seeing the startup world. I would say the largest difference is the fact that you don't have a big brand and the resources that come with that sitting behind you. You know, Stryker is a 20 some odd $billion organization. With that comes immense brand recognition. Anyone in healthcare, no matter where you are, knows the name Stryker. And so by and large, that will get you in the door or at least a seat at the table. And so that's a big deal. And then also what comes along with that are marketing resources, field resources, whatever it is, monetary resources. And so there's a lot to be said for getting that type of support when you're in the field. When you flip over to a startup, you obviously shrink the resources exponentially, almost to nil. And so that has been a challenge, right? I think one of the silver linings in having fewer resources is that you learn faster. By that, I mean, you know, just myself, I'm selling the product, I'm demoing the product, I'm building marketing collateral for the field, I'm IT, so there's a lot of hats that you wear. And we do have an IT department. I just want to clear that up. But, just as an example. But my point is that you get to wear a lot of hats, and I think there's something beautiful in that because you learn things that you would never get exposure to in a larger organization because there's a resource for that. You don't need to build a marketing brochure because there's a resource that can do that for you. And so it's sort of this, it's a little bit of a catch 22. You have to really want to round yourself out in that way because you're going to be pushed into places that you never thought you would be, and maybe you don't want to be, but nonetheless the job has to get done and there ain't nobody else to do it but the people looking at each other. And so it's like, who's going to do this and figure it out? I will say this, and I don't know if we're going to talk about AI much today, but I do not know how people and founders survived before AI. It has made our team like so much more efficient, and it has given our team the ability to do things that perhaps we don't have skill set in. And so that has really helped us feel like we have a lot more resources than we actually do. In terms of selling, it kind of goes back to what I was saying. Like, nobody knows who Giggly is. We don't walk in or send an email and they see our signature and go, oh, yeah, I've heard of you guys. That's great. Come on in, have a meeting. Like they might with Stryker or Medtronic or whomever. And so that, is a challenge. Fortunately, everyone on the team, with the exception of our tech team and the other co-founder, who's also my husband, everyone else on the team has decades worth of healthcare experience. And so that just has naturally led us into places that historically you wouldn't be able to get into because we all have pretty vast and deep networks. We've done right by our customers, we've built the right relationships. And so that's really helped us. It's, hey, you don't know who Giggly is, but you do know who I am. And so let me just take a meeting with me so I can talk about what I'm up to these days. And that's helped tremendously. But it is a wildly different experience. And I smiled when you said it's sexy because I get it on the one hand, and on the other hand, I don't get it. I mean, I don't know the exact statistic, Dustin, but I think it's close to 90% of startups fail. And so there is nothing sexy about that. And it is incredibly risky. And I acknowledge and am so grateful for the people who have taken the risk alongside me. I mean, I get it that it's sexy because of what it could be, but I just caution people that, again, look into the statistics. You're way more likely to fail than succeed. And I'm generally not a pessimist, more of a realist, but that's the reality. So
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things to follow up on there. I do want to talk about AI. We'll save that for a little bit later. And yeah, you do have to be obviously very positive and optimistic, but you have to be a realist. You have to be a little paranoid about certain things. Otherwise, there's no backup plan. There's no one else to help. You have to do that. So I totally agree. And what well said on the differences between big brand versus startup. There's no right or wrong answer. And I think
No.
the whole sexy thing probably comes from social media. It can get portrayed a little bit differently. I do think it's been trending the last few years. It's easier to be an entrepreneur, quote unquote, than it ever has before because of AI and things like that. But it's not, once people get into it, it's not maybe what they were expecting. And on that note, you've had to hire a lot of salespeople over the last decade or
Yeah.
so, whether it be at a big company or where you're at now. Is there any common traits that you really look for or things that separate some of the best reps you've hired or been around?
Yeah. I think it's these like what I would call soft skills that can't be taught, which is typically what separates, a mediocre basketball player like Michael Jordan from a mediocre basketball player. It's the softer skills. For me in sales, it's curiosity. You have to be really curious. It's kind of what I was talking about a second ago. It becomes very obvious. Everyone knows you're a sales rep when you walk in. And so I typically just get that off the table. I'll address it. I'll say, hey, you guys know I'm here to sell you something. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. We all know that. Let's acknowledge it. Let's recognize it. It might be the white elephant in the room, maybe not. I don't know, but I'm going to call it out. Okay, I'm here to do that. But also I'm here to truly understand your business. And that is true. And it has to be genuine. And I have a genuine curiosity for how people run their business, what their challenges are. And I might not be able to fix the problems, but I might know someone who can. Or I might lob an idea out that they haven't thought of that has nothing to do with the product that I'm there to sell. And so I think curiosity is first and foremost. And then perhaps, and these might actually be flipped in order now that I'm talking out loud, but nonetheless, the second one would be perseverance and resiliency. You have to be able to get kicked, and then get right back up. You're like a springboard. It's like get back up, or those like inflatable things that you see by the car dealerships.
Yeah.
It's you're going to hear no 100 times before you get a yes. You have to be unfazed by it. You got to learn from it. Like, why did I hear no in that scenario? What can I learn from this? So you have to learn that cycle has to happen fast though. You've got to hear the no, learn about the no, and then rebound, because momentum is incredibly important in anything, but in sales in particular. And so if you let the no suck the wind out of your sales, you're just going to get into this really bad place and it'll be difficult for you to pull yourself out. So I definitely think curiosity, and then just perseverance, grit, the ability to get back up again over and over and over and over again. That's where I see people succeed, because this sales takes, it can take a solid 18 months when you're new in a role or new in a territory to hit sort of a rhythm, depending on the product portfolio. But it can take a while before you feel like you're getting that traction. And it's like I said before, it can feel like nothing. And then all of a sudden there's this like reward for what you're doing. And so it's important that you keep pushing. Just keep getting back up. I promise you it will turn around.
Love that. And like you said, learn from your mistakes, right? Keep coming
Yep.
back, but you got to learn from your mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes, but don't keep repeating the same ones over and over again, or learn from some of the best people on your team. I found a lot of people don't reach out to the top reps and learn
Yep.
what they're doing, and you can expedite some things by that. The other thing
For
you
sure.
mentioned, which I think is one of the hardest parts of sales that no one talks about very much, is what happens when you work on a deal for 6 months. You think it's a sure bet, you're going to get the commission, and then they go with the competition or they do nothing last minute. And
Yeah.
the mental anguish and how it can mess with your mindset is substantial, especially if you're more commission focused, and you can get it in the tailspin. You can get into a negative mindset for a couple of days, weeks, months. I mean, it can affect a whole year depending on what type of deal. So it's huge to have that perseverance, to have more of that growth mindset that you were talking about. And that's something sometimes you can't teach. Sometimes that's a little intrinsic on that
For sure.
side, but you made me think of that too, because it can be devastating when you lose those deals.
Can I make a comment on the loss really quickly?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when I was a rep in the field, I worked a deal. I was in a very long sales cycle, sometimes 3 years long. And I
Wow.
lost a $1.4 million deal. And I was gutted. I was gutted. And the thing about that is again, you have a choice in that moment in terms of how you're going to let that impact you. And it's not to say I wasn't like, didn't go in my car and, slam my fists on the steering wheel for a second. Certainly did. But then I think the choice you have to make is, are you going to let that define the rest of your year or your quota or your ability to hit quota or whatever, or are you going to use it to propel you forward? And that sounds like a kitschy, like self-help book. But the reality is, once I collected myself, I asked for a meeting with that customer. I sat down, whites of the eyes meeting. I was sitting across from them and I just said, what could I have done differently or better? Like, what was the determining factor? And they were forthright. And it was something I couldn't change. So here's the beauty in that is I didn't lose it because I was a bad rep. I didn't lose it because I didn't, quote it correctly or whatever. I lost it over something I couldn't change. So mentally, that kind of like got me back to square one again. And then this is the thing that I have seen happen so many times. They started the implementation with the competitor. It went horribly. And who do you think they called? Me.
Yep.
And that's because of the way I handled it when I lost. And I think there is so much power in that. A loss might be a loss, but it's never forever. So, because again, they could put a product in and use it for 3 years and then realize that they don't like it, the rep sucks, the service is horrible, and they're going to remember you. And they're certainly going to remember how you responded when you lost the deal. So I think it's really important to leverage the heck out of those losses too. I think it's a missed opportunity a lot of times. And listen, I was by no means always perfect with that, but there is that one scenario that sticks out in my mind. So keep
It's
in front
actually
of
a great
them. Never
segue.
know.
No, it's a great segue. First off, the post-mortem, whatever you want to call it, if you do that live with the customer, I think that's a great idea. It shows a lot of professionalism that you're in it for the long haul. It's not just a transaction and it's not just
Bingo.
about the money. So yeah, that's a great idea. It's uncomfortable. People avoid it because they lost and they think, oh, I'm gonna fix it, but that's a great one. And then you have to address your emotions, whether it be, hey, I'm gonna take a day off, especially if it's a really big deal. I think you need to address it and do something, right? Go
Yep.
on a little mini vacation, go take a walk, go work out,
Not
or
a
whatever.
tequila,
Maybe yeah, you got to, yeah,
whatever.
go have a night out and get after it, whatever the case. But you have to address it. If you avoid it mentally, it's gonna come back to bite you probably. But on that
Yeah.
note, because you've been around really complex sales cycles, that's typically what I focus on and have a lot of pain sometimes with complex sales cycles because it's hard to keep momentum over a long period of time and they tend to stall. They tend to go to no decision. But
Yeah.
I guess you can talk about current state with the startup or maybe in the past, where do you see deals get stuck the most or where do they stall? Is it like after a proposal? Is it I was single threaded, I should have known other people? Where you see things get stuck with these bigger deals?
Yeah. I think here's what I'm seeing. The deals aren't dying because someone's saying no. They die because nobody wants to own the risk of saying yes. And so that is what I see. But for the most part, like there's always nuance, right? Like it could get you, like for what we're doing now, it could get to IT review and then it dies because you're not compliant or something like that. But that's a fixable thing. That still isn't a no to me, by the way. It's, you're not compliant from an IT standpoint. If you can, go fix this and then we'll reconsider your product. So that's not a no to me. But what I'm finding is that, again, it's not a no, it's someone's afraid to risk owning the yes. And so you've got to get to what I call an executive sponsor, but that can take any form. It doesn't have to be an executive necessarily. Depends on the product, right? Whether it's a nurse sponsor. So you've got a voice somewhere out there that lives in the customer environment is like, I have to have this product. What do I have to do to get it through? And so that's, I think, where a lot of deals die is you're not talking to the right person or the person you're talking to doesn't see enough value in what you're doing to own the risk. And so, because it is, I mean, it's a risk bringing a new product in. Healthcare margins are shrinking, reimbursements are shrinking, products are not free. And so, it's a risk to spend the money. And then in certain scenarios, it's a risk to bring products in because they're disruptive. But if you can find the person who is like, nope, I'm good. Let's push this through. Let's get it done. I believe in what you're doing. I'm willing to push the envelope here. You would be floored at how fast it goes. I mean, I have two examples at Giggly where we got to the right person and in a week we had a signed agreement. So
Wow.
it's just, I think so many reps, and myself included, by the way, spend a lot of time talking to the wrong person. So, and admittedly, it's difficult to find the right one, but you'll know when you do. That's for sure. And listen, we're on like sort of this disruptive technology. There's like a technology curve.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I don't know if you've seen it, but we're in the early adopter phase, which is really hard because there's not a ton of early adopters. It's like the smallest part on the bell curve. The early adopters and the late adopters are the smallest part of the bell curve. And so we're on this front end of the bell curve. So it's our audience is smaller just by nature. But if you start to get to the middle of that bell curve, you should be able to find it faster. And certainly if you have a well-known product, you should. But I don't know. I don't interpret no in the same way a lot of people do. It's hard for me to hear a no. I think it's just, I'm not talking to the right person, or they're risk averse, or whatever it is. So hopefully that's
Yeah.
helpful.
No, it's great. You had a couple of things there. First off, the way hospitals make decisions, the way a lot of big companies make decisions, it's more committee focused. There's a committee about another committee. There's all these people involved. No one wants to stick their neck out there as much as the past. And you really have to have a strong personal win for that executive sponsor. Like, why are they really doing this? Does it help them get a promotion? Does it help them have more
Yep.
recognition, save time, whatever it is? Ultimately, it's got to be a must have, not a nice to have. If it's a nice to have, you're just going to keep, meeting, doing some stuff, and maybe never really gets to the finish line, what I've seen at least. And everything you're saying makes sense there. But it's not easy, right? You have
Work
to,
at it.
yeah, you have to find those people, right? Because a lot of times you have the reps that will negotiate with the wrong person, or they're just single threaded with that with Julie. And it feels like we're
Mhm.
dating almost. I don't want to talk to anybody else, but like, no, you need
So
to actually get a lot of other people involved. And you need that person who's going to be willing to beat some head arounds, because at some point someone's going to challenge it and say, oh, we already have something for that, or we can just do
yes.
that with this big company. And that's in a room that you're probably not in. And you
Yeah.
need that person to be equipped to be able to handle it. And it's not easy to find that, right? You got to put in more effort. That's why, finding opportunities that are more likely to succeed and really putting the time there can be challenging.
There's nothing worse in sales than a slow no. If you're gonna get to a no, get to it quick, and then move
Yeah.
on, find another way in, or determine it's not with your time right now and move on to a deal that is. But a slow no, and sometimes I will even say that to a customer, like, "Are you slow knowing me?" Because I just want to know. I want to know. Like, it's okay. My feelings won't be hurt. Trust me. Those were gone. My feelings were gone a long time ago. But just if it's no, let's get to the no quick, and then either move past the no and figure out why it's a no and get what you need to move past it, or just move on. Because it's a killer in the field to focus on deals that really don't have a shot.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's a focus game for sure. It's just sometimes easier said than done on that. A couple more questions for you, and then we'll get you out of here. We did talk a little bit about AI. You brought it up, but curious on that. How have you been using AI? How has it helped you, maybe as a founder? And then how are you seeing it help your sales team? Or maybe it's not really doing much yet. What do you think?
No, it's doing. I mean, have you seen those memes where it's like the robot after a long day and they're like
Yeah.
rolling themselves down a hill? That's my AI. They're like so done with me by the end of the day. So I use it a ton. I use it a lot for like strategic type things where I'm looking to refine messaging that resonates, or looking at segmenting markets, building out customer profiles, that type of thing. So that's how I'm personally using it. I think it's being way overused in social media. And so I try to shy away from it. I'm, again, not perfect with it, but I do try to shy away from using it with social media, just because I think it's becoming really obvious and it's trite. So a lot of it's like strategy driven and more internal facing, I would say. And then for the reps, they use it for customer profiling, figuring out, doing research. There's actually an incredible company who I got to meet with early on in my entrepreneurial journey called Rep Prep AI. And they were two former Striker guys, actually, and they're building this AI platform for sales reps. It's so cool. It's brilliant. And basically what it does is it's call prep. So it assimilates all of this information and it serves it up into reps in the field in a mobile app, which is how they work. They're not sitting behind a computer, they're in their car, they're in the hospital, whatever. And it preps them for these meetings that they're going to have in a really quick, meaningful way. It serves up exactly what they need to know. And so I think things like that are a game changer, because I can't tell you how much time I spent back in the day prepping for meetings and just understanding who am I meeting with, what are their priorities, what do they care about, what do they not care about. And so admittedly our reps don't use that product, but they do use AI a lot for prep and research and targeting. I think it can be really powerful for that. Looking at their entire geography and then segmenting it down, understanding where we have an ideal customer profile for our product, that type of thing. So I think to put a bow on it, strategy is how we're using it. Like high, big brain strategic stuff to help support and supplement. My CCO just created a commercialization plan. We're looking at other segments in healthcare and whether or not it's worth it for us to move into those segments. And that was supplemented by AI. It was a 20-page document. Historically, that would have taken 3 months to pull together. So to be able to pull that together in 3 hours is a game changer. So it's cool.
100%. I totally agree. I think the strategy side, it's so much faster to get you the information you're looking for.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, some of the documents or PowerPoints look substantially better than what I could do. And it would have taken me a long time. Now, it might not be 100% perfect. You have to push back. You have to not just accept everything that comes through, but it just saves so much time of busy work, like trying to put that stuff together. And then it gives you what you need to know to think strategically. And then on the rep side, I love that idea of the rep prep, I think is what it was called. Research before meetings, especially if you're on the road, like med device, where you're driving all over the place. You don't have time to like take notes or follow up. I mean, that saves you a ton of time for the prep. And there's also a lot of things that can automate your CRM data entry, the follow up, making it feel personal. It can just save, you're talking 5 to 10 hours a week easy if you're on the road and you have a decent amount of meetings. And that's stuff that's not a good use of a salesperson's time. I don't call that revenue generating activities. I call that more admin. A little bit of it, you want to be involved. You don't want to just completely not look at anything, but you should be focused in front of the customer. You want your reps to be in front of the client, doing what they do best, getting the next step, showing value, being outcome focused, not spending hours prepping or following up on stuff. So yeah, totally agree on that. A lot to go there. And then as we kind of close out here, just what's looking back at your career, you've had so much success and a lot of exciting things and you're still building a great thing now. What's one piece of advice you would give yourself looking back that maybe you didn't know that you wish you would have known back then?
Wear sunscreen first and foremost.
There we go. I live in Florida, so it's good. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Wear sunscreen. And then, I would say stop waiting for certainty. What I've learned is that true confidence comes through repeated action. You have to like take the step and do the scary thing and push past knowing everything possible to take that step. It's impossible to know everything. You're going to have to move without knowing the full picture. And so the older and more advanced I get in my career, the more I realize that the confidence that I have in myself, in my ability, in my skill set, in taking on new things like Giggly, that came from me just repeated action, repeatedly pushing outside my comfort zone, taking the sales manager job in a completely new division of Stryker where I know not a soul. Like that is scary, scary stuff. You feel like you're starting all the way back over, and those experiences are invaluable. Now I know that when I go start something new, fine, I'm going to be okay. I'll make some mistakes, I'll screw up, but I'm going to land on my feet. And so I wouldn't have that had I not done those repeated actions of pushing beyond my comfort zone. And I think so many of us are guilty, myself included, of just kind of staying where we're at because it's what we know. And you can learn in that environment, but you're not going to learn as fast as you would if you take a step that you're unsure of. So I would just tell myself, wear sunscreen and stop waiting for certainty.
I love that, and definitely on the sunscreen too. But you're right. It's probably not going to be linear. If you take more risks, it's probably not going to be linear. So you have to expect that. But once you get over a couple of those hurdles, it's I don't want to say easy, but it's easier because you've already
Oh,
been there, done that.
definitely.
You know it's going to be hard. If you get knocked on your butt, you're going to get back up. You
Yep.
can look back on those experiences and it actually helps you for future perseverance or challenges that come. So I totally agree. And not for everybody. It depends on where you're at in life, what you have going on with the family and all these different things that factor into it. But you don't want to look back and wish you would have tried something that you really were passionate about and then you don't have a chance to anymore. So I feel pretty strongly like if you have that chance and you've done some
Go
due
for it.
diligence, you're never going to have 100% certainty, right? But I totally agree.
Yep.
Cool. Is the way closing out? What's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you or maybe learn more about Giggly? What's the best way to do that?
I am admittedly horrible on LinkedIn DMs. I'm bad at DMs in general. But connect with me on LinkedIn for sure. I love talking to people, whether it's a sales rep trying to get into med device, an entrepreneur looking to take that leap of faith, or other founders or folks like yourself. So, I mean, LinkedIn is a really good spot. I'm not great on social media. I'll admit. So that's a great spot to start, and I promise to do better with my LinkedIn DMs. There's so much AI in LinkedIn DMs now; it drives me nuts. So it's hard to tell when I'm connecting with a real human being, but that's a good way. That's a good start. And I try to filter through the AI and get to the real folks. And I've made a lot of really genuine connections that way. So reach out. I love talking to people and helping where I can. And likewise, I love learning from others. So